In a beautiful house on the hills, Chris lives alone with his wealth. He was the inventor of an app called Watchdog Home Security, which allows you to control the entire house from your phone. However, he also sold the company to Google and retired early. When he had a change of heart, it was already too late. His relationship with his wife, Jamie, was already in a bad state, and she asked for a divorce. Although Chris has not yet signed the papers because he misses her. Currently, their daughter, Willow, lives with Jamie, but she still loves and misses her father. One rainy evening, Chris goes shopping and sees a trail of water on the floor, which leads him to Sky, a young woman who got caught in the storm. Chris gives her some advice about wine before continuing his shopping, and later he sees her from outside. When he learns that her Uber was cancelled, Chris offers to give her a ride, and Sky accepts. A few moments later, Sky hesitates to enter her apartment because she still hears the screams of her roommate, Lisa. It seems they had a fight, and Sky thought Lisa had already left. Chris invites her into his apartment, and at first, Sky refuses, but as the screams do not stop, Sky changes her mind and leaves with him, while the apartment owner, Ronald, watches them from the window. At Chris's house, he shares some ice cream with her and shows Sky his wine collection. As they begin to get to know each other, Chris talks about his app and how he enjoys being alone, which is why he goes shopping late at night. Sky mentions that she used to be a model in Los Angeles but got tired of it, so she moved here to find something better. When it gets late, Sky thinks she should go home, but Chris invites her to stay, and they end up spending the night together. The next morning, he wakes up alone as Sky returns to her apartment, while Ronald continues to spy on her. Lisa scolds Sky for not calling her and leaving her alone for so long, revealing that this is her house, and Sky is with her because she is more than just a roommate. For the rest of the day, Chris can't stop thinking about Sky. When evening falls, Chris picks Sky up from the bar where she works. Sky is happy to see him, but before they can continue getting to know each other, she must admit that she lied the previous night, that she came here because she was running away from an abusive family, and she feels like damaged goods because she's never had a real family and has been in foster care since the age of 6. A few moments later, the two of them reach Chris's car, only to find Kiju, the thief, trying to steal it. Chris calls out to him, only to step back as Kiju becomes aggressive, but Sky escalates the situation by throwing a beer bottle at the thief. Enraged, Kiju responds by kicking Chris until he breaks. After a night spent in the hospital, Sky helps Chris return home as he's in a wheelchair until his leg cast is removed. Sky feels guilty and wants to help more, so he decides to hire her as a caretaker and tells her to go get all the things from the apartment so she can move back in when he returns. He also gives her the security system codes. When Sky arrives at the apartment, she finds Ronald telling Lisa that she was happier before Sky came into her life. Sky makes Ronald leave, who draws attention to the spying activities he's been doing on them, and Lisa seizes the opportunity to scream at Sky again, begging her not to leave. Sky promises she won't, and they struggle to make amends. A few moments later, Sky returns home to Chris and spends her day taking care of him, while Chris is so distracted by Sky's presence that he doesn't notice Jamie's phone call. When it's time to go to sleep, Chris tells Sky that he loves her, but Sky attributes it to the medication. The next morning, while Chris is asleep, Sky takes his phone and steals it after unlocking it with his face. Meanwhile, Ronald goes to Lisa's house to ask for rent. When there is no response, he uses the access key to enter and is shocked to find Lisa dead in the bathtub. Immediately, the police arrive and explain that it appears Lisa took her own life, so Ronald tells them it was probably because Sky left her. However, the police become suspicious because they can't find any trace of a woman named Skylar Webb in the databases, making Ronald realize he's never seen any form of identification for her. A few hours later, Chris receives a call from Jamie, who is surprised to see Chris more distant. Chris tells her about his leg and asks her to bring Willow on Friday, promising that the divorce papers will be signed by then. Later, Chris takes the opportunity to look into Sky's bag and discovers a few photos of her and Lisa together. Sky catches him in the act, but she doesn't care. Understanding his need to get to know someone better, they have another busy evening, but after Chris falls asleep, Sky goes to spend the night in his daughter's room. The next morning, Chris wakes up and realizes that Sky has disappeared. He can't find his phone, and the tablet isn't working, but at least the main screen in the house is working, and Chris learns from the news that Lisa has died. At that moment, Sky comes home, and Chris tells her about Lisa, but Sky doesn't care and casually admits that she was the one who killed her. She never loved Lisa, but was merely using her for her apartment. It was the perfect place for Sky to spy on Chris and learn all his habits. For 2 months, she had prepared the perfect setup until their meeting at the store, which wasn't a coincidence. Chris tries to kick her out, but Sky ignores him, and when Chris tries to leave, Sky locks the doors because she has always had his phone. Meanwhile, when Chris tries to retrieve his phone, Sky knocks him out with a stun gun. Meanwhile, at Lisa's house, Ronald goes in to clean up and finds Sky's telescope pointed at Chris's house. Ronald realizes he can use it to spy on his neighbors and decides to keep it there for his own use, thus discovering that Sky is hiding from the police in Chris's house. A few moments later, Chris wakes up and is tied to a wheelchair. Sky comes to demand all of his passwords and security codes, but Chris refuses to speak, so Sky injures him with a drill until she gets what she wants. Sky then takes advantage of the afternoon to transfer all of Chris's money into her accounts. Later, she returns to Chris to have him make a few calls to his bankers and brokers to liquidate his stocks so she can fund her company. While Ronald is still spying, Sky uses scissors to free Chris's hands and make him presentable for the video call, and Chris seizes the opportunity to push Sky to the ground and try to attack her. Unfortunately, Sky grabs the scissors again and wounds Chris in the shoulder, then forces him to cooperate, threatening to harm Jamie and Willow. Chris agrees to play along, and Sky begins photographing the expensive art and wine collection to sell. A few hours later, Giju arrives because he has always worked with Sky. The two of them go out to do some business in town, and later, Ronald enters the house by breaking a window, triggering an alarm on Sky's phone. Ronald agrees to help Chris only after the latter agrees to give him his Picasso painting, which is worth $7 million. Unfortunately, Ronald doesn't have a mobile phone as he believes it causes brain cancer, but he starts to free Chris. At that moment, Sky returns and uses Chris's phone to lock all the doors and prevent Ronald from escaping. Ronald tries to hide in another room, so Sky leaves Chris in front of the cameras to show him how she is tracking Ronald through the house with a sword from her art collection. Eventually, Sky corners Ronald in the garage and kills him, destroying the Picasso painting. Chris takes the opportunity to free himself completely and escape outside, but the car is locked, and he can still use the snowmobile. The descent down the hill is difficult with a cast on his leg, and when Chris reaches the bottom, he collapses and falls onto the road. A car coming from the opposite direction stops just in time before hitting him, and the driver, Sebastian, doesn't hesitate to help Chris, carrying him to the car and calling the police. When the operator answers, Sebastian hands Chris his phone, who starts to describe everything that happened, only to freeze when he realizes that Sebastian is taking him back to his home. It turns out that the person on the phone is Sky, not the police, and that Sebastian has always been working with Sky. Sebastian hits Chris and puts him back in the wheelchair before kissing Sky and explaining that he is her stepfather. Sebastian had married Sky's mother, but she died after a few months, so Sebastian took the opportunity to start a relationship with Sky and teach her how to be a good scammer. She is exceptionally good at making wealthy elderly people fall in love with her to rob them, and Sebastian believes it's okay because the rich have everything and don't share with the lower class. In the evening, Chris is forced to listen to Sky and Sebastian having fun in his room. Later, Sky comes to see Chris, telling him that she will miss the house when she leaves. Chris points out that she could have had this life by being his girlfriend instead of stealing it, but Sky doesn't want to acknowledge that these dreams can become a reality, and tells him that they still want to get to Chris's safe deposit box at the main branch of the American bank, which contains $14 million. To access it, they need Chris's fingerprint. So, Sebastian arrives, and they cut Chris's finger. The next morning, Jamie arrives home with Willow and is immediately suspicious. Sky pretends to be the nurse and tells them that Chris is sleeping, so they should come back later, which prompts Jamie to threaten to call the police. Since Jamie isn't cooperating, Sebastian also enters the room and drags them both into the same closet where they left Chris the previous night. As Chris reunites with his family, Sky puts Jamie's phone in the microwave to prevent it from being tracked, and Sebastian creates a fake prosthetic to use Chris's thumb. During the journey, Sebastian notices that Sky is acting strange, as if she's unsure, but she swears she's fine. At the bank, Sebastian pretends to be Chris and uses his thumb on the safe deposit box, though it takes him a few tries to get it to work. However, when he finally opens the box, all he finds inside is a note. In the house, Chris notices that there is an air vent and wants to make Willow escape through it, and Jamie initially refuses because it's too dangerous, but she changes her mind when she realizes it's their only chance. Chris makes sure Willow remembers the lock code and helps her get out. Later, Chris tells Jamie everything that happened, and Jamie tells him that the criminals won't find the money because she took it. Chris realizes that the criminals will return soon to demand ransoms and tries to tell his daughter to come back, but it's too late. She has already left the house and returns through the front door. Sky and Sebastian see her through the cameras and rush into the house to finish the job. Sebastian hands Sky a gun and confirms that the closet is empty. As he walks down the hallway, Chris jumps on him to attack, while Willow and Jamie hide in another room. As Chris is still weak and injured, Sebastian easily beats him, giving Sky time to reach them and point the gun at Chris, demanding to know where Jamie is. Sebastian continues to scream at Sky, demanding her to shoot Chris, which infuriates Sky after years of abuse and prompts her to shoot Sebastian. Chris takes advantage of the distraction to stab Sky and retrieve his phone. Using the app that controls the house, he plays music loudly to cover up any noise that might give him away and turns off the lights, but he manages to see Sky through the cameras. While Sky is wandering, Chris messes with things in the house, such as opening windows and starting the fireplace. When Sky finally passes by the door, Chris jumps on her and throws her gun away before fighting her on the ground. Sky easily overpowers him due to her injuries, prompting Jamie to come out to confront her. Sky stabs Jamie in the leg, and Chris responds by attacking her with a sword, but when Sky is about to kill them both, she suddenly falls to the ground. It turns out Willow has appeared and used the gun effectively. Police sirens can be heard outside, so the whole family is now safe.